Mark Lowery, I guess. I get a lot of the time when I used to sing at Christian coffee houses, and there was the guy that ran the place was such a marketing genius. When he would get calls and people would go, "You mean Mark Lowery's going to be at your place?" And I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Lowery with the Gaither Vocal Band, but he would say, "Oh yeah, the Mark Lowery's going to be there," and I'd show up on a Friday night, the place would be packed. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry that you're here under false pretenses." Well, I know that you're not here tonight under false pretenses. You're here because you believe in what you're doing. And I know it was mentioned a while ago, all the challenges that we have schedule-wise. But it's okay. You know, getting to speak to a group that would come out here on a stormy Monday night, NCAA basketball night, I know that if I'm able to get a message to you that I'm the candidate to support in District 39, I know the word's going to get out. I've already met one lady who says she knows a whole lot of folks in Maumelle. So now my job is to give you information of why you should feel comfortable with me as a conservative. You know, I think we've heard through several messages already this issue about messaging. And I think having been a longtime conservative, having been, as a friend of mine says, I was a Republican when Republican wasn't cool. I ran back in the 80s against a 5-term incumbent Democrat in a very much gerrymandered district where you really had to have a hard head to try and break through the walls, through the barriers to be elected as a Republican. I was 27 years old when I first ran. I was outspent 5-1 and I got 45% of the vote. I was very proud of that. And the Republican Party was very proud and asked me to come back the second time. And we did a lot better. It was a non-presidential election year, so we didn't really have the turnout that we needed. The party tried to get me to try a third time. I said, "Man, you know, this ain't Rocky. You know, it's not, this is real life. This is tough stuff." And it is tough stuff. The tough stuff that we have to do, we do have a challenge. We also have an opportunity where we truly can be a Republican majority House and I believe Senate. But we have to do it right. We've not been doing it right. I think what we do, we fall into a trap as conservatives that we're so convinced that we are correct, and we are, that we think we don't have to message, that we don't have to be crafty in the way that we get our message out. And I'll give you an example of that. I have been, and I know this is, for some people, this is like a real big negative, but if you give me a chance, I'll explain that it's not. I've been a lobbyist for the last 8 years. Now, the reason it's not a negative is because I've not been buying dinners and golf rounds and trips. In 8 years of being a lobbyist, I've not spent one single dime in fighting for Arkansans. That's who I've represented. I've represented Arkansas insurance agents, your neighbors, your friends, probably your insurance agent. I've also, in previous years, represented the Christian Coalition. And so what I did is I brought ideas to the legislature, many times helping write legislation, helping craft legislation. So in effect, I've been a citizen legislator. And so I want to bring that experience to this year's race. You see the literature there says the right experience. And that's not just a play on words about conservative right or anything like that. It really is to help us understand, help the voters understand that, you know, community activism is a good thing. We have a great community in Maumelle. But we have a situation now where we are going to be in charge. And we need to make sure that we don't elect people who need on-the-job training. We need to be able to hit the ground running. It's one of the downsides of term limits is that sometimes it takes you a while to get up to speed. We have to get up to speed immediately. One of the issues that I saw in the legislature this last session where I thought messaging really needed some help. I agreed with the position the Republican Party took, the Republican legislators took in the House Insurance and Commerce Committee when they opposed asking for the planning money for Obamacare. But the message that went out is that they were just doing that because they were against Obamacare. Here's the message that we needed to convey, and I've actually said this to Doyle Webb. If we had said instead that every one of us are fiscal conservatives, and it is not fiscal conservatism that says, let's take $2 million and plan something that's probably going to be thrown out, that's a message that even Democrats want to embrace. So you don't have to start counting heads in that committee. You've got Democrats now that are under pressure to say, wow, how do I explain to my constituents that I want to waste $2 million? See, that's the messaging that we need. We have to take on the tough issues. You know, I think one of the reasons why people aren't talking about the deficit, especially politicians, is because we don't have any answers. And we're scared to come before a group and not have any answers. But one of the things we have to do is we have to incentivize the state government cutting, spending within our means. With a biennium budget, one of the difficulties that you have is that you have to plan 2 years ahead of time. Now, I know the fiscal budget changes that somewhat. But the essence of government is that government always wants to grow. Bureaucrats always want more. And we have a system in place that if you have a responsible administrator over a division and he comes in under budget, what he knows will happen is that his budget will be cut for the next biennium. We know that there's waste out there. We have to find it. And there are Arkansans, there are good Arkansans that are state employees. They want to come forward, but they don't have the protection they need to be able to come forward and tell us where the waste and where the abuse is. So I want true whistleblower protection for state government, county government, city government employees who can come forward and say, this is where the waste is. Here is where the fraudulent use of your tax dollars are. And I can say that because my job is protected. But secondly, I also want to use my position as a bully pulpit to raise money, maybe through a foundation or a nonprofit or whatever, but raise money that would be able to give rewards to those employees. You see, I don't think it's a good incentive to reward them with state dollars. But there are good conservatives out there, philanthropists, that really believe in this strongly enough that if they'll put their money behind making sure that we expose waste and abuse in government. And it's there. We just have to have the resolve, we have to have the will to do it. Now I know the people of Maumelle have a choice in this primary, and then of course as the Democratic opponent later, they have a choice. They have a choice of two different types of experience. I can't put on my resume that I coach ball teams and all that. I did that 15 years ago. My kids are grown now and out on their own. But what I can do is bring the experience I've had as a businessman, as a citizen legislator, so to speak. That experience I can bring to help, I think, really make Arkansans proud that they are going to have a Republican majority legislature. And I'd like to be able to represent Maumelle in District 39 and actually all of it, all the state of Arkansas. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I saw the time. I probably used up any time for questions as well.
You can take a couple.
Okay. Any questions? Drill me. Grill me. Toughen me up. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and please tell your friends in Maumelle if you're not from there, I would love their vote.